recorded. So welcome everyone to our conversations on Black love, the power of parenting. This is for me, for those of you who know, I am, my mama called me Janice Johnson. I go, however, in the United States, often by Dr. Janice Johnson Dias. I married a Cape Verdean Black man. And so, I'm now Afro-Latin and everything in between. But I'm still just a Black girl from Jamaica. This is my series of conversations with the brilliant people talking about Black folks and who we are, how we love, how we parent, and how we try to negotiate the world. And my first conversation occurred with Girls for Change in Virginia. And then the second conversations were with brothers in Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. And so today we bring ourselves to Georgia. And this talk is co-sponsored by the Grassroots Community Foundation, where I am president, and the Black Rose Foundation, whose president is Dr. Sheila Fleming Hunter. We have been partners longer than the existence of the Grassroots Community Foundation. Black Rose has served as a fiscal sponsor, a supporter. Sheila, the president and the founder, as well as a friend, really helped to get us started. So I'm excited, and I just want to say thank you to begin with. Today, we are joined with all kinds of excessive things and excessive people, right? So everyone out there, people are talking about like Black girl magic. We grown folk, so we're gonna talk about Black women brilliance here. And it's happy Black women can call each other girls, but we don't call each other girls here because we already were girl, and I think some of us might have even enjoyed it. So today I have three brilliant folk to tell you about. We're going to begin with kind of our moderator and our guest of honor, who is Dr. Beverly Shetfall. She is a big deal, y'all. She's a big deal, but y'all don't know she a big deal. And I began our conversation by saying, like, I'm hella nervous, right? Like, like smart Black women, like people like me, people are like, oh, you smart. But I was like, she's smart like our ancestors are smart. Like we new wave. It's like nouveau riche. Like you got some money, but it ain't inherited wealth. So Dr. Guy-Shetfall is the founding director of the Women's Research and Resource Center. That's in 1981. So all you kids born in the 2000s, right? This is the 1900s. And the Anna Julia Cooper Professor of Women's Studies at Spelman College. Now, if y'all don't know where Spelman is or what Spelman's about, shame on you. Get your life together and go research. For many years, she was a visiting professor at Emory University Institute for Women and Women's Studies, where she taught graduate courses in women's studies. At the age of 16, she entered Spelman College. You see what I'm saying? Come on now. When I was 16, I was not entering college, where she majored in English and minored in secondary education. After graduating with honors, again, right? That's why we all here. She attended Wellesley College for a 5th year of study in English. In 1968, she entered Atlanta to pursue a master's degree in English. Her thesis was entitled Faulkner's Treatment of Women in His Major Novels. A year later, she began her first teaching job in the Department of English at Alabama State University in Montgomery, Alabama. I want y'all to note these years. In 1971, she returned to her alma mater, Spelman College, and joined the English department. I'm gonna read some more stuff about her, but I really want y'all, if you ever feel accomplished, get yourself adjusted on the number line, okay? She has published a number of texts within African American and women's studies, which have been noted as seminal works by other scholars, including the first anthology on Black women's literature, Sturdy Black Bridges, Visions of Black Women in Literature, which she co-edited with Roseanne P. Bell and Betty Parker Smith. Her dissertation, Daughters of Sorrow, Attitudes Toward Black Women, 1820 to 1920, Words of Fire, an anthology of African American feminist thought, an anthology co-edited with Randolph Bird entitled Traps, African American Men on Gender and Sexuality. You know, we need that book today. That needs to be reprinted and be in our hands. A book co-authored with Janetta Betts Cold, Gender Talk, The Struggle for Women's Equality in African American Communities, an anthology, I Am Your Sister, collected and unpublished writings of Audre Lorde, as well as a host of other novels. Her recent publication is an anthology co-edited with Janetta B. Cole, Who Should Be First? Feminists Speak Out on the 2008 presidential campaign. Y'all know I got a lot of thoughts on that. A scholarly journal of Black women, which was devoted exclusively to the experiences of women of African descent. She is the past president of the National Women's Studies Association and was most recently elected to the American Academy of Arts and Science. Please welcome Dr. Beverly Guy-Shetfall. Shit, I'm gonna grow up one day and my bio's gonna be like that, right? The next person I'd like to introduce to you today is, I'm gonna call her Io, because because y'all know I'm Jamaican. And if you know Jamaicans, we destroy people's names, okay? And I already told them that. Io she's Dr. Io, MD, right? Like, you know how we have a PhD, I can describe the pain you're in. She actually could help you, right? So don't get sick around me and be like, oh, Janice is a doctor. No, baby, I can only describe your situation. She is a board certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. She is a humanitarian, a health media expert, and entrepreneur. She brings her expertise in the field of psychiatry to the masses through practical discussions and relatable delivery of subject matters. She brings a psychological perspective to modern concepts such as relationships, parenting, career planning, and use of technology with features in national media. She is well-versed on the benefits of, oh, hold on one second. Let me just mute people as they enter. If you could mute yourself as you enter, that would be most helpful. She is well-versed on the benefits of, and you know how somebody's bio is a big deal when there are words in it that you can't even say, right? Notably CBD in healthy living, and shares that knowledge through her hemophilific platform. Did I even say that right? Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, this is now we out of control. She graduated with a medical doctorate from Morehouse School of Medicine and remains an adjunct faculty there. She completed her psychiatric and fellowship training at the Emory University School of Medicine. You see how Emory, now if y'all know Emory, it's the exact opposite of Morehouse, right? Okay, we'll come back to that. Where she received numerous awards and accolades and was nominated as the chief resident. She obtained a BS from the Georgia Institute of Technology in Applied Biology, where she graduated with honors. Come on now, y'all are out of control. She is a seasoned healthcare administrator and has instituted numerous programs within organizational systems like juvenile justice, which we call juvenile legal, and child and family services to bridge the disparities gap in behavioral health. She also practices clinical medicine in the juvenile system and partners to serve children and write books through her family's nonprofit, the Black Rose Foundation for Children. Please welcome the doctor who can actually give you medicine, Io. Hey. Now, third and certainly not least is Alero, whose last name you see right there. Y'all should learn how they got last names that I can't say. Now, if you done read all the books that you need to, gone and get your medicine, and you feel litigious, then you want to go to the good Juris Doctorate. To Alero is a licensed attorney and academician. She completed her undergraduate and master's program at Florida State University. This is how you know, I mean, y'all don't know this about me yet, but I say this, I refer to indigenous Black people as 1865ers. And I was like, this is how you know you were 1865, because all of them, you notice they have HBCUs in connection, you know, Negroes like me who didn't know what a HBCU when we came to the US. We didn't know. You got to forgive us. We didn't know. Nobody told us. I just want y'all to know, right? She completed her master's, undergraduate and master's program at Florida State University. Sparked by a love of children, she taught middle and high school students in the subjects of what? English and global studies. You see all the linkages. After that experience, she decided to attend law school at the University of Florida. With the help of her law degree, she worked as an assistant public defender in, please say the word, Volusia County, Florida, and an assistant district attorney in Henry County, Georgia. She worked as an attorney in the fields of criminal, again, not justice, legal system, civil litigation, and child advocacy. Coupling her love of the law and education, she also served as a criminal justice faculty and a domain leader for Argosy University. She currently works as a staff attorney for Clayton County, Georgia. Yo, y'all are doing the most down there. And volunteers as a child advocate for several organizations, including the Black Rose Foundation for Children, where she serves as the director for the legal education and advocacy program, LEAP. Welcome, everybody, to the most highly accomplished, overcredited group of Black women that we could have on a Saturday afternoon. Y'all, damn, right? And here I am, I'm Black Janice. I have a PhD, and so I've written a book that is very important to me, that brings together the knowledge and the wisdom of some of the people in the room and women I have lived with. I am delighted for us to be here today to engage in a conversation about Black love. And the reason why this conversation was so important and why I begged my very good friend, Criselda Thomas, to find Dr. Hetfall is because her work, as you heard me read in her bio, her work centralizes Black people. And my book is published by Ballantine Books, an imprint of Random House. And I have spent a lot of time talking with a lot of—
Say the title again. Say the title again.
The title of the book is Parent Like It Matters: How to Raise Joyful, Change-Making Girls.
All right.
And that book is published by Ballantine Books and Random House. And so Random House, you know, is one of the top 3 publishing houses. And those conversations, right? The United States is 72% white. And so when people say they're popular in America, y'all know what that means. And so my conversations have been beautiful and they have been great, but they have really been a conversation that has not been centralized in the Black experience. And I wanted to make sure that I honor what is true and real for me, which is, since I've been in the US since 1984, I have spent an inordinate amount of time with white folks and white communities, and that feels perfectly fine for me, but I live in the body and raise and work with and advocate for and galvanize Black folk. And so I wanted to make sure that as I engage in this work, that it wasn't a work that left our communities behind, our thoughts and ideas. Dr. Hetfall's work centralizes, Alero's work, Ayo's work centralizes our narratives. The work of the Black Rose Foundation, the work of the Grassroots Community Foundation centralizes us. And even sometimes when we think about the Black experience, we do not necessarily put Black women, girls, children, their perspective and their ideas to the forefront. And so I wanted those things to be the central part of our convening. And I could not think of a better group of folks. So I am really grateful for you to join us on this Saturday afternoon for this conversation. I'm going to turn my role over. I'm going to get to my role now, the one that makes me nervous, right? Because introducing people don't make me nervous, where Dr. Hetfall will serve as our convener and moderator in a conversation about Black love and about the power of parenting. And we will have a discussion among the 4 of us for about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up to your questions. Feel free to use the chat to make comments, to have questions, and we will attend to them after our discussion. But now I am turning it over to you to go ahead and query and engage us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me start by thanking Griselda, my sister comrade friend who teaches at Kennesaw State University, for introducing me to you, Janice. And also thank you, Janice, for introducing me to Io and Alero. And let me start by saying, when I read you all's bios, and also in preparation for this, let me just say, in preparation, I always prepare. In preparation for this afternoon, of course, Janice, I read your book, How to Raise Parenting Like It Matters, in the long title. And I also read, Janice shared with me, Io and Alero, an incredible essay entitled Black Women Teaching Black Girls to Love. I learned so much, and I learned so much by reading that essay. And one of the things that I did, and we'll get to it, I used you all's analysis of what constitutes good parenting for Black girls. And I used that to revisit my growing up with my Black mother, and I gave her an A. And I also want to just say that I had never thought about something called love studies. So Alero and Io, I want to thank you for introducing me to some ideas that I had not thought about. Let me just say, in general, I've been in recent years interested in the evolving field of Black girlhood studies, Black girl studies. And so I would say that the three of you are what I would now call serious Black girlhood studies scholars. And so whenever I'm now going around in places where we're doing Black girlhood studies, I'm going to say, you have to read Alero and Io, and you have to read Janice's book. So I wanted to just start by saying, you all are some very smart Black women. I also never feel as smart as lawyers or medical doctors. And so, interestingly enough, I imagined that I would be a pediatrician and go to medical school, but I didn't do so well in pre-med in college. So I switched to English. So let me just start by saying that. So this is going to be a real conversation, and I'm going to try very hard to have us really talk candidly and personally about this issue of Black love, and particularly as it relates to Black girls. So the first thing that I want to start with is to ask you to reflect a little bit upon what it was like for you growing up as a Black girl, particularly in terms of the relationship between you and your mother. So tell us a little bit about your Black girlhood. And I'm also interested in you thinking about what you imagine you might be when you were a Black girl. And I indicated to you all that I thought I would be a pediatrician, and you see that didn't happen. So, just I'm not going to call on anybody. So reflect upon your own Black girlhood and the parenting you received from your mother, and what you who you imagine yourself to be as a Black girl growing up. By the way, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, in the 50s. So I'm a whole nother generation. I'm 75 years old. So I'm old enough to be you all's grandmothers. Okay.
Okay. My name is Alero Afejuku. So I'm used to being first, being that I'm a double A. Thank you so much, Dr. Shetfall, for that commendation, because when I was listening to your bio, I was like, oh my goodness, what's gonna happen? Because it was such a heavy hitter bio. So thank you so much for allowing me to be in relation with you. And then Dr. Johnson Dias, I mean, I love you. I've learned so much from you over the years in terms of parenting and how to be a Black mother, especially to a girl. I don't have a girl, I have a boy, but you are one of my sheroes when it comes to parenting. In terms of my girl child in my girlhood and my relation with my mother. My mother is my ultimate shero. I never was able to have heroes or sheroes in the classroom or even in school or anything, because I had the person directly at home that was showing me, how to be and who to be. And so I had that idealistic view of a mother in front of me every day. Someone who just gave me love lessons and pearls every day through how she was, through how she exemplified herself, and also just giving me teaching sessions. And in turning to something I saw in Dr. Johnson Dias's book about starting motherhood by loving yourself and knowing yourself and being a good person yourself. I had a mother who knew who she was all the time and would tell anybody who didn't who she was. So I got a chance to see that as an example. And it was good for me as a young girl to have an example of somebody who was confident, who was sure of herself, and who floated on air to me when she walked into the room, and everybody else believed it because she believed it. And in terms of who I dreamed I would be, I thought I was going to be, well, first I did. I like Dr. Shetfall was like, oh, well, maybe I will be a doctor. But then chemistry happened. So that was not a good experience. So I wanted to be a newscaster. And I ended up being a lawyer because I argued with everybody and people told me I would be. And it just kind of happened. But I was able to become a Black woman and the person I am because I had a mom who showed me how to love yourself and love others and be altruistic.
Yes.
That was good. I don't want to follow that, but since I have to, the interesting thing is we grew up with the same mother, as you will see. We are sisters, and so we shared the same mother. But unlike Alero, I saw my mom as this like figure that I felt like I could never live up to. Like she was just so much of a force that I was like, well, how can I ever be like that? Or how can I even approach life like that? And so I think younger, there was some insecurities there. And I know as Black women, our Black mothers always want to build us up and, make sure, like Alero said, our self-esteem is there. And even though she was giving me those lessons and telling me how great and beautiful and strong I was, I think there was some insecurity there and I was the youngest, I was the baby. So I had this all-star mother and this like beautiful, gorgeous older sister. And I was like this stubby, chubby little dark-skinned girl in a light-skinned, amazing family. And so I think over time, I was overcompensating for some of my insecurities that I had growing up. And so I think writing and becoming a psychiatrist, which I actually hate to be a me too, but thought I was going to be a pediatrician because I love kids and I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to change the world and heal everybody. And then I did my peds rotation and I didn't really like sick kids or snotty noses. I love the stories and talking to the kids and putting pieces together and using my experience growing up to do that. And so I just want to thank my mother for doing all she could to be a role model and be a light, because she did teach me that you could be more than a mother, right? And a lot of women are afraid to do that. They think if I have a career or have a strong marriage or travel or do all these other things, that makes me not a good mother because I have to be obsessed with my children and only live for my children, which is to me not a good balance and a good fit. So I thank her for that and showing me that I could pursue my dreams and really could be a light once I found out how to be my own light and shine myself and not in relation to her or my sister or another woman, and just find out who I was and shine as I am. So long story short, that was my life story.
So I read a lot about clearly my childhood, but the pieces that are not said there is that when I met my mother at 9, I just remember like everybody else being in awe of her. My mother, in Jamaicans talk about, she has a Coca-Cola bottle shape, right? So my mother was first runner-up to Miss Jamaica. She was just like really pretty, right? She broke all the rules. When we were kids in Jamaica, women were not supposed to wear pants. They weren't supposed to perm their hair. They weren't supposed to have nails that were long. And my mother just defied. Like my mother was the Suge of the community, right? And so she wore red pants. She wore red terry cloth shorts with the split up the side. She wore heels. She just did not care. In Jamaica, we say minor response. Like my mother just didn't, though the rules didn't apply to her. And I was in admiration of her because I didn't have a construction like the US construction of like how you're supposed to be in relationship with your mother. My mother was living, I was her daughter. Her role was very simple, provide for all of my fundamental basic needs. And my mother was very good at that. Like she always was obsessed with the fact that we needed to eat, we need to have clothing, we need to have shelter, and those needed to be dependable. And she was willing to do, and that remains her thing. She's always willing to do anything she can to secure the material conditions of our lives. And as a society, Jamaica's different in terms of here, there's a lot of need for emotive care. But that was not the way that family constructions were when I was a kid. Kids suffer because they didn't have material goods. And my mother was a good mother because we always had all of our material needs. I did not understand that she sometimes didn't have the things that she needed, but she was really clear that we needed to have every single material things. In the book, I used the phrase, I've always been occupationally agnostic. I do not and have never really cared what I did. I never wanted to be anything. I certainly did not want to go to college. I was clear that as we came to the US, people kept saying how smart I was and that I needed to go to college. And my mother would get the letters from the teachers. And I was a good, obedient Jamaican, so I would just bring home the letters. I didn't know to open them or potentially not bring them home. And she said, the people say at school, they say, you're very smart enough. They say, you're very smart. And I said, okay, because in Jamaica, I was a smart kid, which is like a big deal. And in the US, I was seen as a really smart kid, right? So Jamaica's primary education is really like, it's where it gets all its shine. So to have been considered smart in Jamaica, by the time I get to the US, I'm considered super smart, but I don't care. And she cared. And so when it was time to think about what I was going to do, the only thing I wanted to do was to be a kid who left my mother's house. Not because I didn't like my mother, but I was really clear I did not like my stepfather. And I didn't like him because I found him to be many things that I still don't enjoy. But I just wanted to move on with my life. Like good Jamaicans, you graduate high school, you do something, you do something, you do something else. Occupations are for like a select group of people. And people kept saying, she should do something. The girl is just very smart. And I wouldn't say that I like to argue with people. I'm just very clear that some people are wrong. And so that meant that people thought I should be a lawyer. And I said, if they say I should be a lawyer, then I'll do that. And I was all set to be a lawyer until I was dating a boy who loved The Cosby Show. And we had been dating for quite some years, and he was intended to go to medical school. And he said, we're going to be just like Cliff and Claire. And something about that sentence was the end of the relationship for me. I decided not only did I not want him, I did not want to be a lawyer because I found Claire's life to be objectionable. She never seemed hurried or haggard. And she had 6 children, and it bothered me. The Cosby Show bothered me. And so that sentence became like a really big thing. I was like, this imagined self of never, because I've seen my mother hurried. We had 4, my mother, a single mother, right? Hurried trying to do stuff. And she always seemed to have it together, but there was no home helper. There was no, like, I was just like, I am never going to be imagined. And I broke up with the boy, Mr. Managa, I'm not going to law school. And I became an English teacher. And this knack for connecting with kids started to really just be a thing that I would do. But even to this day, I've been a professor for 13 years. I still don't have an imagination about what I want to do. I think I've been so obsessed with how I want to feel that my occupations have just been less interesting to me. I will do anything as long as I feel all right.
Can you talk up a little bit? You're getting low.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I said
yeah.
I will do anything. So
Yeah.
I've
That's
just
better.
never been interested in what I actually do. I want to do things that I like to do, and I will do the things that I like to do. But because I'm from a culture that had a flat occupational structure, I just never aspired to any specific occupation, but I have aspired to the way I want to live. And so I've been moving myself since a childhood to live in a way that just would maximize my freedom and my kind of happiness. And so that's how I move. So that's why I've done so many different things. And it's not that I don't care per se. To say I don't care, I choose things that allow me to feel that way, but I don't even feel as attached to the identity of a professor as much as I feel attached to the identity of a person who shares information with people who don't have information. And anything that would allow me to do that, it could be professor, it could be something else. I'm excited to do that.
All right. One thing I want us to do, if there's a comment or a conversation that you want to have among each other when you say something, don't wait on me. Like if you want to ask Io or Janice or Alero anything after they speak, you can do that. In other words, we're going to have a real conversation. So do any of you want to say anything to each other or ask anything of each other based on what you share?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
So
because we're going to have a conversation among all four of us. Okay.
So Ayo said a sentence that it's something that I've just been learning a lot more about, right? So like people who have my skin color are usually not in the war, as I call it, between the dark skin and the light skin. Like we are bystanders because we not either. And you said what it's like. So clearly I know your mama, right? Like I never thought about your skin color as a role in relation to how fair Sheila is. So could you say more?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I mean, now in the world, like, I don't know, somehow I got lighter over time, but I was a little darker growing up, maybe because we lived in Florida and we was always outside. But like, because my mother was fair, my sister was fair, they would refer to me as like the dark skinned one, or they would ask me like, is that your real mom? Or so it wasn't necessarily something that I internally thought about until society or people around me questioned me or made me think, okay, do I not fit, or is something wrong? Is this my real mom? You know, like, I think so. And so it was very external where the impetus started. And then I started to look for information that fed that narrative, you know? So then I was just picking up on social cues or things people would say that weren't necessarily intentional. It was feeding the narrative that I heard younger. And so I think, you know, the dark skin, light skin thing, I mean, I'm sure we could have a whole thing just on that, but my mother never talked to me as if I was anything different or told me I was anything different. But my father, you know, as an African man who I didn't grow up with, I didn't really get to share that with him. You know, I looked like him and my skin color was like his. So I didn't have someone to share that with. So I felt like this outsider on the light skin side of my family after it was pointed out to me. So yeah, no, I don't think anyone's a bystander in that conversation once society tells you which side you're on, you know.
Well, I'll tell you why I asked. so because I described my mother's shape as having this Coca-Cola bottle, my mother has only one daughter, and I'm 5'10". I was like 98 pounds, and I went up and down. And so people would be like, well, your mother's like this. And they were like, well, she looked like a boy picnic because I had no shape or character. So this reference between the way people see you and the way they see your mother, it's just like, it's always been curious. And it really created some space between my mother because I was never as girly. I never looked as girly as she did. And she never had anything to say about the fact other than she was like, I think somebody put Orbia on you while you're so skinny. Was like, she never made me feel bad about being so thin, but everybody else did. They were like, oh, she ain't got no shape, right? She ain't got no, like, so it's this reference that external people like put on you to compare you to your mama, especially if your mother is seen in a particular way. That's the piece. So the colorism piece, I mean, I know that's its own thing, but this idea of like this reference between you and your mom, I just think for me is just a really curious thing.
Yeah, and I think that happens a lot in our society about the physical comparisons between our daughters and mothers that carries on in our relationship.
I would say physical appearance and Black girls' physicality, maybe even more than any other group, is huge in helping us to arrive at positive self-esteem or even loving ourselves.
Yep.
Alero, did you want to say something about that?
About physicality, I feel like it's just Black women, girls, people comment on my physicality now all the time, like at work, peers, everybody. So I do think that there's something about the physicality of girls and women that we carry throughout lives, and we have our different cycles with it. It can impact how we feel, we are feeling about ourselves, and that could definitely impact our parenting. I did want to kind of follow up with Dr. Janice about her comment about, I was just so shocked. This is the first time I've ever heard somebody say that seeing the Cosby Show at that time, of course, now we have our different feelings about it, but at that time that they felt, they saw the show and didn't feel aspirational. And so I do want to follow up with how she feels now about Claire as a mother, and if she feels as if Claire is aspirational or not, because I feel going through life as a mother, I am always harried. People may not see that, but that is how I am. I'm like, and sometimes the only person who may see that is my child. Like, why are we rushing? Why do we have to do this? Why do we have to do that? So I still feel it's aspirational to be a mother and to not feel harried and hurried and to want to be unbothered by a lot of things.
Well, I was, again, because I am not American, right? So by the time the Cosby Show comes around, I'm in college. And this is actually when I become American. This is I describe college as this experience now of like, okay, so they're like people who look like me. In Jamaica, Black is not a thing, right? But like, there is this distinction now in Blackness, right? So I'm watching the Cosby Show in a different world at a point that I've decided I'm not going to be a math major. I'm now going to be a sociologist. So like, these are all coming to the forefront. And so I become overly analytic about what is being presented to me. The Cosby Show, there were so many things about it that I really enjoyed, but I mostly enjoyed Vanessa. Everyone else was like a big space. Something about the Vanessa character felt very much like a person like me. It was a person who did not get a lot of attention, but was going about their business, wasn't overly anything. She wasn't overly pretty. She wasn't overly bright. She wasn't overly anything. She was just middle of the road. And there weren't a lot of storylines about her. She was like Jaleesa of Different World. Like, I see them as the same characters. And so that felt very much like how I saw myself. So everyone was judged from the angle of their relationship vis-a-vis Vanessa. I felt like the mother saw Vanessa in moments, but didn't see her. The brother got a lot of attention because he was the only boy. The youngest was the youngest. You had the problem child and you had the highly accomplished child. And so for me and my family, it just was that way. As Claire as a mother figure, there were things about her I really enjoyed. Two things in particular. I enjoyed that she was always quite stylish in ways that matter to me because I was developing this identity. And it mattered the intimate moments that she would have with her husband on the couch. I really enjoyed. I knew that the way in which she read or scolded people was fun. I liked that a little bit. I didn't like that they overused it. I thought that was overused. But the fact that I never felt like the character had the complexity, the Claire character didn't have the complexity of the husband character, the father character, bugged me. And to quote my mother, when I told her I was having a child, her sentence was, "I didn't think you were a lesbian, but I didn't think you liked men that much." Right? Is that the kind of the excessive attention on men irritates me all the time. And so now I have language for it, but I felt like the show was really paid a lot of attention to the men characters, and I wanted to know more about her world, and I got very little, so therefore she was uninteresting to me.
It was a patriarchal middle-class Black family.
But I didn't have I just didn't have the language. I was just starting my social major. I was like, she don't have nothing else to do with her life. What does she like to do? Like, he likes this music. What does she like? What happens? Does she meet up with our girlfriends and do they, just like, I just wanted so much more. And so when I don't have it, I don't imagine it. I said, she placid. And so I moved it up.
So I'm glad that there is diversity among us in terms of and I think it's good, Janice, that you became a U.S. person, because sometimes even in African diasporan context, we assume that all of us are the same because we are Black. So and of course there's generational differences here. Since many in the audience, I'm going to assume, haven't necessarily read your work, I would really like for Ayo and Alero sisters to talk about the essay that I referred to. And then, Janice, I would like for you to talk about the high points of your book and why it is, all three of you, why you felt compelled to write these amazing a book on the one hand and articles on the other hand. What motivated you to do it, and what do you want readers to take away from those texts? And I think it's really great that two sisters wrote an article together. That doesn't happen very much, particularly when one is a doctor and one is a lawyer.
Well, I'll be honest, our mother, who is on, actually was the one who brought the idea to us and really kind of looked at it as a way to connect all of the different things that we all do. Her as a professor and educator, Alero as, a legal voice, and myself as a medical, and say, how can you approach parenting from all of these different perspectives, yet solidify a message on what that might look like in an ordered sort of way, and give people kind of a guide, right? There's no one way to parent, and there's no one way that's right or wrong, but can you provide tips on how you feel you can create a loving child from all of these different perspectives in a unified voice? So that's how I feel, it came to be. And my mom saw that vision. As you see, my sister and I, are very different, and our fields are very different, our perspectives are very different. So I don't think we saw it as much as she did. And it kind of came together for a unified voice. And I'll let Alero tell a little bit more about, or do you want me to talk about what's in the book? And then, okay, I'll tell about what's in it, and then she could tell about what we wanted people to get from it. So what's in it is an introduction into love itself and what love means, because that, I think, is one of the biggest issues and problems with learning how to love or teaching people how to love or just discussing love. You know, we all have a different idea of what it means. So we wanted to centralize that theme. And then I came in and gave some kind of clinical perspective on how you can organize love as a attachment and a bond, and from a psychological perspective, giving boundaries and setting limits while also giving your children, you know, the ability to feel and letting them know emotions were okay and that sort of thing. And then Alero came through with the advocacy piece on mentoring and that relational aspect of being a Black woman and having a Black daughter, and how that might look in the true life form and social space. And I'll let Alero tell a little bit about what we wanted others to take from it.
Thanks, Ayo. And I think the essay, what we wanted people to take from it was kind of sort of my, actually probably my piece, which is the practical steps to, if you really are at a loss, if you haven't been, I have a lot of people that I'm in relation to just from being in the legal system, I love how Dr. Johnson Dias is saying it's not justice system. We're hoping one day can be a justice system. I have a lot of people I'm in relation with that just as parents have never been shown love, have never experienced love. So how can they teach it? So from that perspective, giving somebody a mother practical steps to how to show their daughter what love is, what it means, and how to love herself, even if they've never been shown that themselves. So we hoped that people would take those clinical pearls and practical steps and tools to show their daughters how to love. And I think that Dr. Johnson Dias's book is like an explosion. It's so funny how we in no way were related with that, but are in relation when it comes to the essay and book, because we have this small short work that hers is an explosion of. So I think that's wonderful.
That's why you can tell that we, you know, so we had no idea that we were working on the same kind of concepts at the same time, even though we've known each other. Right. So the first time I'm seeing the essay is when Sheila sends it to me 5 days ago for me to send it to Dr. Shetfall. So the book for me is, you know, I think just like Ayo and Alero says, there are some, because I have worked as a practitioner and I am a scholar, and I run this leadership training, I really wanted to bring all of those things together, but I wanted people to get a thing that I find really valuable in all that I do. I wanted them to get the realness, much like Dr. Shetfall is pushing us, which is like, academics have a lot of things to say where they're several degrees away from it. So I offer narratives of my real life. And I wanted folks to see what a living embodiment of joy looked like. And to know that some of us get some rocky starts, and but that's not the whole story, right? The whole story is that despite whatever rocky start you got, right? For you all who haven't yet read the book, you get some good stories of my rocky starts, is that love is still accessible to you. And in fact, that rocky start could really end up being a real gold mine, because it gives you insights into things that your children will likely face as they grow. And that insight is a beautiful thing, but only if you access it through healing. And when you do that, when you heal from that rocky start and you get to the other side, then you have a bounty of things to share. But parenting is mostly about you. It is about your ability to be able to be joyful so that you can share. So in the book, I would say the biggest punchline of the book is that you cannot raise a joyful change-making girl unless you are a joyful change-making parent. And the process to become a joyful, change-making person and parent is your work, yo. Like, it's your work, and the work is possible. And so I offer research, I offer my life stories, I give you narratives inside the lives of these 65 families that I've worked with in New Jersey over the past 10 years for you to see the real examples. And I hope that at the end of the book, what people will feel is this ultimate possibility, that this is something that I can do and something within my reach.
Janice, let me just, I'm going to just summarize for a minute all of the, which was amazing to me, all of the characteristics that Janice says are important for Black mothers to instill in their daughters. And it's a big recipe. Self-loving, empowered, compassionate, adventurous. You know, girls are frequently not socialized to be adventurous, critical thinkers, fearless. That's a big one, fearless, change agents. I think it's unusual to have a parenting book in which we are encouraged to socialize our girls to be change agents. In other words, to be a force in the world too, not just be a force in one's home, but to be a force in the world, to care about people, and to be advocates. This is another, advocates for oneself and advocates for others. You have, all three of you have disrupted traditional gender norms, including for Black girls. You know, we assume sometimes that we don't have a notion in our head of traditional gender norms, but in many ways we do. So I like the fact that all three of you in your writing, and someone asked that your essay, Ayo's and Alero's essay, be put in the chat. But all of those characteristics are way beyond the sort of traditional gender norms that we are encouraged as girls to embody until maybe we get to be an adult. But you all encourage these kinds of characteristics to be happening even when we're young, adolescents, young girls, not just when we get to be a certain age out in the world. Did you all want to say anything to each other about any of these? I love these not just messages, but clinical pearls. I hadn't heard that phrase, clinical pearls, and love lessons that were in the essay that I think loomed very large in Janice's book. So you want to say a little bit more about clinical pearls, love lessons, and all of the things that Janice suggested?
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I'll get back. So why we call them clinical pearls? And I think psychiatry itself is so elusive to people. People like ask me, they're like, well, what do you do? Like, how are you different than like a social worker or like a psychologist, or, and I think.
Drugs.
And no disrespect, we all work together to do what we do. But I think what makes psychiatry different is we have to know how the brain functions on a chemical and a functional level. So when you go through trauma and you go through, disappointment, and when you go through relationships, your brain changes, your body changes. And I think it was important to let people know how the external world and relationships can affect a person and their body and their mind and their chemistry on a basic level, right? I'm not talking about neurology and, chemistry and everything in there, but the ideas of that are there. Like why kids crave structure. It's not because they want to be told what to do. It's not because they want to be told no or, be afraid of the world. It's because they need to feel safe and secure. And the brain tells you that you want to feel safe and secure. And when you don't, it makes you anxious and nervous. And so I think those concepts for me were very important to just kind of talk about where the body starts and where people start, and, bring it all the way back there. It's never too early to start building your relationship with your child, or trying to ensure your child is healthy and ready for love and relationships. And so that's where the clinical pearls aspect came from. And we wanted to kind of dip people's toe in that arena, not send them to medical school or anything, but just let them know how important that stuff is. Because you hear, food in the womb is important, and, all that kind of stuff, and play music for your child and all that. But no one really teaches you why that stuff's important, or how that affects the fetus or the child in general. And so just bringing up those concepts as clinical pearls, to me, was important to get people started in an idea and recognizing that, you as a person, are chemistry, you are neurology, you are biology, and the world and you affect that in your child.
Really like that. I know, Alero, you want to say something, but I just want to really say how much I really like that, because I think a lot of people miss how important maternal health is for people's long-term well-being. And, I engage in a lot of conversations with moms about it, about like, people always ask me like, where should we be investing our money? What should we do? And I was like, y'all, if you want anything to change in our community, you got to figure out how to invest in Black women, especially anybody who's interested in producing life. Because what happens with us in terms of when we are ready to produce, everything up until that moment is what is going to make a human being. So, the stress levels, the genetic stuff that we put together is really what we end up seeing. And I think people just don't know that. There's no reason. I tell my mother all the time, I was like, sis, can we talk about these toes you gave me? Right? Like, next time, next lifetime that you go romp with somebody, just check the toes, sis. Check the toes, because it's a draw what toe I'm gonna end up with. But like, that's the casual part, but other people end up with other factors that they don't understand. That maternal health, what is happening, there's no prenatal medicine that is going to manage that stuff. That science piece is everything, it's just everything.
Yeah.
So I had Alero, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it's kind of not piggybacking, but in relation to what you're saying, that I found interesting about both of our works, is that being a mother, and your joy as a mother, and who you are as a mother, and your purpose, and you being fulfilled, is just so important. As an American, we are taught that motherhood especially is about sacrifice. So if you are not sacrificing, or if you're not giving a lot up, then you are not being a good parent in, a lot of American households and culture. So to think of motherhood and being a good mother to your daughter as finding your sense of joy and finding your sense of purpose and filling who you are as a person is just so profound, and something that I think is a message that a lot of, particularly Black American mothers, because as Black Americans, we are taught that sacrifice is just part of the game. Trauma is a part of the game, that is just what you're going to experience, and everything else, don't worry about it. So to think of finding joy as a part of being a good Black American or Black mother in general is just really profound to me.
Before we turn it over, one of the things that I think, generationally speaking now, Black mothers didn't do a really good job of helping their daughters in the area of sexuality. There was silence, or just messages like, just don't do it. I think that and I hope that this has changed some with your generation, but I would say that was one aspect of Black motherhood that even mothers like mine, who were sophisticated in all kinds of areas, they hand you a book about your menstrual cycle, just hand you a book. And they really don't know how to talk to girls about how to develop healthy relationships and what to do with sexuality, with their sexuality. So would you all talk a little bit about that?
Well, yes. Well, yes. right? When your mama is shug, right, you gonna get some bad but great advice. Ill-informed, but that was the area. If I had to give my mother the highest score on, other than security, I would give her the highest score on freedom of sexuality. Like,
Okay.
because there was so much bridling, attempted bridling. My grandmother was a good Anglican woman born in 1901. And my mother would not grow up to participate in the Anglican Church. And so she was really clear. My mother also has 4 children. Each of us have a different father, and all attempts to shame her for that failed.
All right.
Right? And this has been very sad for my family because there's been so much attempt to shame her for it. And I remember in Jamaica, when I was a kid, again, because we finished high school at 16 and you go into the working world, onset of sex begins fairly early relative to that, because 16 is your 18, 20, right? And so when I was 12 and sex became a part of like the cultural group of us who were ready to have sex, participating in sex, even though my mother's desire was like, if you could just wait more years, that was not gonna happen. I was ready. And her conversation was, she was like, my brother, Andrew, my oldest brother, she said, let me tell you something. The little white stuff that come out, it can get you pregnant. People don't tell you that to know, but you should know the little white stuff. You think you're just playing around, but it'll come out and you'll have a picnic, right? And when she was convinced that I was having sex, now in the US, at 14, she said to my boyfriend who came to the house, she gave a jumbo box of condoms to him. And she said, you want to touch my daughter? You better touch her with these. And my mother, and he went to school, was like, yo, son, her mom said I should finish these. I was like, yo, that's not what she said. That's not what she said, right? But she said to me, she said, I'm gonna tell you something about sex, right? And usually I just tell my friends part of the story, but I'll have to give the extended version. She said, it changes your mind enough. Once you lay down with people, it changes your mind. She said, if you're gonna lay down with somebody, you wanna make sure you want to know them for the rest of your life. Now, I'm 14, I was like, the rest of your whole life? She said, yes. Here's why. If you get pregnant, and even if you decide to have an abortion, that's your whole life enough. You're gonna remember that. That day not gonna pass you, right? She said, if you have the picnic, that's your whole life. Picnic forever. She said, if you get a disease, you never know if the disease is permanent. That's your whole life. And if you decide to lay down with somebody, you want to make sure that. And then the last sentence she said, because there's no children, if him don't eat your pussy, him not love you.
That's the part I want to talk about.
All right.
This was Miss
All
Monica.
right.
That's what I was waiting on. Because
Right.
I do believe that in the South, people, at least if you have educated mothers, they do talk to you about sex, and they do talk to you about it can get you babies and all of that. But the joy part,
Right.
I didn't have that discussion with anybody until I think my college friends were my mother in that regard, So I think that it would be great, being a mother of a Black girl, to talk to you about Dr. Janice's mother. Nobody talked to me about oral sex or what a man is supposed to make you feel like, or even if you were supposed to get the joy from having sex. So just to even say to your daughter that sex should be joy,
Yeah.
is to me a prolific statement.
Yes.
That would be wonderful to make.
My daughter.
And I think Dr. Jacqueline, you said, I hope a lot has changed in that regard. And as you see, it hasn't changed very much. And I think, and I hate to do this, but it is like Dr. Janice said, the Black culture relishes religion as our end all be all. We got through slavery because of religion, and we are religious people. And so we are teaching our children to have this dichotomy of, oh, I'm very religious, yet I want to be free and sexual with my body. And people don't know how to reconcile those two things. And the community has not united on a voice for that. And the church has been very, all over the place and scattered on how to do that message. And so I think until our community can say, yes, church is definitely a major part of the Black community, and it is a really good way to learn values and come together and have a voice, but there's all these other ways, like Dr. Janice's mother, to live life and be successful and be okay. Until we can do that and teach our young girls that they have a choice in that regard, I think that the sexuality conversation is going to be hard. And it's going to be even harder because now we have something called the internet where they can Google everything, and they are. And my 8-year-olds, come to me asking questions now, and they're watching porn and all these things that we didn't really have to go through in our generation. So now we got people who are not equipped or understanding of what to say, getting asked about oral sex and whatever, animals or whatever, younger and younger and younger. I mean, even my 2-year-old the other day pointed and said, "Where'd your pee-pee go?" Just those conversations. What happened? What happened to your pee-pee? And so, those conversations, it's starting younger and younger. So we as a Black community need to come together and decide, what are our messages for healthy sexuality? What are our messages about religion and tolerance and teaching people to love themselves no matter what? And those, conversations.
Well, Janice, I have to share this with you. Since you mentioned eating pussy, my mother, there were 3 of us girls, and we were sitting around the kitchen table. I mean, my mother was in her 50s, and we started talking about oral sex, and she said, "What are y'all talking about?" She had no clue. I mean, she wasn't judgmental. She said, "What do you mean?" She did not know what we were talking about.
And that's why I was going to say.
I mean, not a clue. And so we had to tell her.
That's why I was going to say it's deeper than religion. Because they teach you that when you're with your husband, it's going to be a great experience, but no one goes into detail about how do you get to this good experience?
No.
Or even
y'all want Monica though. Miss Monica. So my mother she works with me. I mean, maybe she's not, because my daughter currently, like when I got to college, we had a phrase that we had among our girlfriends: "Don't die over dick." Like there's no leaving the party and going off with the dude. Everybody who comes together stays together. Mm-hmm. And my mother was very serious about pleasure. She was very serious about pleasure. And, again, my mother would never argue that she had some kind of sophisticated taste, but she was also open to the idea that sexuality and sensuality and identity were different. So the reason my mother didn't marry, right, from the story about the little white stuff, is that she really enjoyed having sex with my brother's father, but she was not prepared to be married to him. She did not wish for marriage. We all, I know all my brother's fathers, very nice men. And she said, "You can like sex, but don't want to keep the man." Just really very, very lucid about the distinction between that. But she said, "Don't fool, when I had a boyfriend that I enjoyed having sex with. I'm not confident I liked him, right? But I really enjoyed having sex with him." And she said, "It's all right. It's all right. But if you keep having sex with him, your mind could change. And by then his mind might change too." Right? So the idea is like, we're in the sexual relationship, and she wanted me to make sense of like, he might like you a lot now. You don't like him that much, but the better sex gets, you might like him a lot. but he noticed you didn't like him that much. So you might reach a place where by that time, he's left that place. And so she's like, if you don't really, really like him, then you shouldn't sleep with him, right? And these are the pieces of Monica that are really like the strongest pieces, was that she really understood, she really liked the pleasure of sex. And I remember once when I came home for school, now your parents have guidance on you, you were living free. And she said, oh, baby, you think you're out there, you're doing all kinds of things. Me retire my thong long time, right? And, and she was just really clear that sexuality made you happy, made you joyful, and that you should embrace it. But there were these twists and turns in it that you needed to get a handle of. So like my friends today, everyone laughs about like my relationship with men. And that's why she didn't think I liked them that much, because I found them so utilitarian as related to sex for so long, that the idea that I would want to have this long-term marriage was just really surprising. She was like, I never think that you like them like that. But it was important for me because now my daughter is 16, she's in the suburbs. And so she doesn't have the sexual freedom that I did. I always know where she is. Sis, you can't get it in, right? Like there's no getting it in. So she's gonna go to college not having had sex, which I think is an absolute injustice, but I can't do nothing about that. But given that she's going to college without having had sex, there are these rules about pleasure that matters. And also the rules aren't all about heterosexual sex. And she needs to have an understanding of that. Now, she don't want to hear my mouth, but I really want her to recognize that my mother's thinking about sex was heterosexual, right? That she, I grew up, I spent all this time with her and with boys, but my daughter's world is a different world. And I actually have no advice other than the generalized advice that goes along with it. But I think that we have to open spaces to recognize that our children's sexual framework is greater and broader than the ones that we had.
And more fluid.
Exactly what I was saying. Like, there's just, it would blow our minds. But I think what we need to do as responsible mothers and women are just give our children the openness and knowing it's a safe space to talk about these things with you. It's not about what you say. You're never going to say the right thing. You're their mother or their aunt or whatever. It's about letting them know it's okay to trust me with that information. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay. I am a person that you can come to. And the rest, is good luck.
Yeah, because I mean, if anything, as a parent, you know that you can't get all those tidbits in or they'll be overwhelmed. The other day, I have a son, I don't have a daughter, but I was telling my son he was going on a camping trip and, don't let anybody, if this happens, just do this. If this happens, do that. And I said, do you have any questions? He said, yeah, what's gay? And I was like, what? I'm talking about a camping trip. If you see something, say something. But so it's just like Ayo said, he felt open enough to ask me. He knew what it was because as I told him stuff, he was like, yeah, okay, that's what I thought it was. You're just kind of validating what I thought. But just having the space for your child to feel like they could come to you and talk about those things that they've heard or seen or felt.
Janice, I know we should leave room now for some Q&A.
Yes.
I don't know how we do that.
Okay, so if you would like to ask a question, please put it in the chat or let us know, and you can either write your question or you can ask your question on camera. So please let us know. I know. So I just want to give some framework. So a lot of this conversation about Black love has to do with what are the parameters of love, right? Like oftentimes it seems like Black love had all these conditions. I love you if, I love you why, I love you under these rules, etc. And what I hope people are hearing is that for us, especially having written this book, these articles, and these children's books, is that we're asking Black folks to reframe, reconsider, extend learn more and engage our children in a way that, in the book I say their fullest human potential, like open it such that they can really be the kind of human that some of us didn't get to be, right? And we want them to be greater versions of themselves and greater versions of what is possible. So please ask your question. You can unmute yourself. I think, if you're having trouble, I can help you, but please put your question in the chat and we will open the floor now. Right?
And I don't do well with chat. Can you do this, Janice?
Yep, I'm coming.
Well, I saw earlier in the chat, I'll address one of the questions earlier when we were talking about the physicality discussion, was if there was something I felt my mother could have done to help my insecurity in regards to, her physical and my physical and what was building. And I do think she did what she could in addressing what she knew, right? You can't parent what you don't know or what you haven't experienced or, like Janice said, learn more. And so she did what she could in terms of trying to build my self-esteem and letting me know that I was beautiful and she thought I was smart and that, beauty and looks isn't everything. And, that you have to love yourself and not listen to the world.
Sure you don't want to go with?
In terms of messages. So I think security is something that's built over time and our mothers have a big impact on that, but then the rest is up to you.
Janice, this is Sheila. Since I've been referred to several times in this conversation, I thought I would identify myself as the proud mother of these two daughters, Alero and Ayo. I am honored, Beverly. I don't know if you remember me, but I was at Spelman with Dr. Manley was president. Yes, we worked together. So it's good to see you again. Thank you so much. I was so happy that Janice asked you to be a part of this. And of course, Janice, my dear friend, I love you. Thank you. I learned so much about you. I love your mother. And I just wanted to say, I'm glad, for having worked with my daughters. And Ayo, I think Alero has all the other the books we did, the children's books too. We want to point out that we wrote 2 children's books, one that focuses on girls and one that focuses on boys. One is about justice and teaching them about justice and boys, the characters of boys and them trying to figure out what love is all about. So I just wanted to point that out as well and thank everybody for coming on and participating.
All right, I see a question in the chat. Lisa, would you like to read your question?
Yes, thank you so much to each of you for this amazing set of lessons. I'm still learning. I too have a 16-year-old and thankfully I was able to course correct some things as I was also a Grassroots Community Foundation Supergirl. And I learned more, actually, it says it's a camp for girls, but it's really about interrupting parents. Janice would say, don't fuck up the kids. So my question is, so much of what each of you have described today is about self-love of the mother, of, like coming to some self-actualization and working on yourself. But often as Black girls, we're tasked with working towards basic needs. Janice talks about her mom trying to make sure that she got the food that she needed and the shelter. And, we hear about Claire and the fact that she seemed self-actualized and didn't seem hurried. But we're, as Black women, working to keep it all together and make all that happen. And we are operating and doing things that are just perpetuating the very same systems that we hope to or ascribe to shifting. So how, my question is, can Black women begin the work of self-love earlier so that by the time they become mothers, they are able to ultimately, not perpetuate the challenges that we've described today?
You want me to take this one? Janice, go ahead.
No, I would prefer you take it.
Okay. I feel like we're all like doing shameless plugs. I wrote a book a few years ago called The Modern Trophy Wife. And the book is about, how to have your life goals while also being successful in your home, whether that's being a mother, whether that's being a wife, whatever you're doing in your home, how to be able to do that as well as do that. And so, a lot of that book is building you up to be the woman you want to be. And that does, like you said, start with self-love. And so a lot of the major ways, like we referenced, are to one, know your voice and try to get to know who you are separate from all the noise. There's going to be a lot of noise around you across your lifespan. And until you learn to listen to your voice, recognize your voice, and shut out those other voices, you're not even going to know who you are, much less love who you are. And then the rest is kind of, with not judging yourself, and be a little more graceful with yourself, like we are with our friends, right? I talk to my clients and they say all these things about themselves, and I'm like, you're rather rough on yourself. Let's reverse it. And that was your friend that had that same experience or felt that same way. What would you say to her? So we need to give ourselves a lot more grace. And like Alero said, we've built Black women up to be super women, and we can handle everything, and we can do anything and take on trauma and everything, but we don't need to be glorifying those traumatic experiences and doing everything by yourself. So having a network and a support system and a mentor and people around you that can help you learn the world and teach you that will then prepare you to love yourself and know yourself better, and then be a better mother and teach your daughter how to do the same thing. So, the judgment and the criticism and the comparisons, we've got to get that under control. There's no way to be perfect. There's no way to look perfect. So just scrap that and get to know yourself and listen to that voice and have a support system are a few of the key ways. And it doesn't matter if you've got $100,000 or $100, these concepts are universal. And so, yes, while you have to worry about security and, making sure you can live and eat, that's not who you are. That's the situation you're in.
Tia has a question. She's having challenges accessing the chat. So I'm going to unmute her so that she can ask her question.
Mm-hmm.
There you
Can
go.
you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we got it. First of all, thank you ladies for having this wonderful conversation. To sit at the feet of brilliant Black women is my most favorite thing to do in the world. So having this time on a Saturday by myself, had to kick the kids out so I could do this, is just making me super happy. I do want to ask sisters, you referenced, and so too did Janice, referenced not teaching our children that suffering is part of parenthood. We all know that the speeches that the NFL players or the basketball players get when they get up and get the awards always include some sort of, my mom sacrificed, she scrounged, she said she ate peanut butter and jelly, and some nights she went to bed hungry, and she did it so that we could, right? Every Mother's Day card starts with, you suffered through, you came to soccer, you were sick and hungry, and you still. But the truth is, some of that is part of what has to happen when we're parenting. How do we have that conversation around balance so that they know that suffering is not normal, but there is going to be some compromise or some, something that we may have to give up to ensure that that we're raising our children in the best we can.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I struggle with that all the time with my son. I first struggle with that within myself to say, if I'm not doing I couldn't take him to golf today. And he asked me why, because I was doing this. And he's like, your children, whether girl or boy, will make you feel like you need to be at everything and for them for everything. The more you give them, the more they want. They're voracious when it comes. I don't know if fathers experience this, maybe they do, but it's when mothers, they're just voracious with our time and attention. But to say to yourself, I am one person, and to set aside some time just for you and just be adamant about it. And that's hard for me because overall, I really just am not a person that focuses on only the fun stuff. But it's so important for, like you said, I clapped because when you said you kicked them out to do this, That's so important. Just to have those nuggets, that little time to say, I'm gonna watch Hallmark tonight. And I'm not watching the basketball game or whatever you want to watch, not tonight. Or because I'm approaching middle age, I have a lot of conversation with friends about work and finding joy and how to find our joy, and to say, I have always wanted to garden. I'm about to go to Walmart and buy a bush and plant it.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry you have a soccer game, but I'm not going to make that today because of that.
Alero, I also like for you to hold up the book that our article is in, because I just want to make sure, because the question is very relevant. This book, Black Women's Mental Health, what's the subtitle, Alero?
The subtitle is Balancing Strength and Vulnerability.
Yeah, and it's very good. It's a scholarly book. It's edited by Stephanie Evans and a couple other people, and that's where our article was. And so they talked about some of which your question had to do with, us being the psychosocial, thinking about struggle and all. But then the rest of the book talks about how you balance it. And these were, these are social workers, mental health professionals, all of us are social scientists. But it gives some good nuggets there to answer your question. And I placed the title in the chat as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and I think that subtitle of balancing strength and vulnerability is important. And that was basically what your question was trying to engage. It is good to say you were going to struggle and you were going to encounter ups and downs, and that's how you build your strength. But it is also okay to fail and be weak, or even have the vulnerability of, like she said, self-care. And that is a vulnerability and transparency, because you have to let people know, I'm not going to be sane if I don't take care of myself. I'm not going to be strong if I don't take care of myself, or hire that babysitter or whatever, and that's the part of being vulnerable that Black women haven't been taught to do. We've been told you can endure rape and slavery and sexual harassment, everything. So then again, it looks like, why would I go to the spa? That's ridiculous. Why would any of these XYZ things that you're saying, how do you balance? So we have to really look at the balance of strength and vulnerability, and knowing there are two sides of the same coin that we all have to have. You can't be strong without being vulnerable. You cannot be strong without having a community or support, or allowing someone to help you.
So my 2 cents, much of which are in the book, have a lot to do with the fact that I exist in a heterosexual relationship with a Black man. And I really never let anybody forget this. They don't like to remember that a part of my reality is that as a person who's married to a 6'3" Black man, he got hella stressors that I will never understand, because he's a walk-in challenge in his workplace and outside of the workplace. And I get it to the extent that I can. But I also exist as a Black woman in America with a noticeably identified fact that I'm a woman, and patriarchy asks too much from me. And I got strong hostile feelings about that. I got hostile feelings about what it means to be a mom versus a parent. I got hostile feelings about wifedom. I got hostile feelings about these roles, and yet I exist in them, right? So I do cook more than he cook. I do more care work than he does. Right? I do more motherly, womanly shit than he does. I don't like all of them. I'm still doing them, but I don't want my child or him to ever forget. Never, ever forget that this is real. I'm not mad about it, right? Per se, because if I give up the care work, he has more capacities. I try to tap into his capacities, but he's 50 and he got to 50 without some of this foundational care sharing. My husband does not. Girls are trained in care work very early. And so I am better skilled at the care work than he is. But that don't mean that, bro, you can't grow up and learn more how to do more care work. And unfortunately, and this I learned very early from my really good mother friends, is that the child is the experiment for his training ground. Is that there are times where she wants mommy care. Sis, I can't, you're gonna have to get that daddy care. I know that's some B- for my A, but guess what? You're gonna have to rock out with this B, yo. Like, because right now I'm doing this thing. Now, that is not gonna be the case if you're a single parent, right? But so I wanna speak from the fact that I recognize this privilege that I'm in this tool parent household. So for those who are single parent, I know this is not applicable, but I really want people to kind of understand that this is my reality. Sometimes my daughter does not get mommy care and has to settle, that's the word I'm using, y'all can be in your feelings about it, settle for daddy care, because that's the reality of preserving my humanity, right? And children know, they're like, she top shelf, bro, you tap, right? It's okay, right? And I try to balance out that opportunity, but I'm constantly, from the time the child was born, constantly trying to let her know, like, you human, you own you responsible for you, me human too, right? Me human too, me responsible for me. And, now she got jokes because she's like, oh, you gonna play with your friends. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go play with my friends. Like, you go play with your friends, right? And, because she's a 16-year-old and they're assholes, right? But like, that's cool. You got friends? Guess who got friends too? I got friends too. You know how you don't want me with your friends? I don't want you with my friends, okay? And so that's what we're gonna do. And that has really worked and I would say I'm batting a B+ on that, right? And it's fine, because I've always loved a B. I've always loved a B. Anything higher than a B is a win for me. So I don't take parenting as seriously in terms of how I do it, as much as I know the work of parenting is so important for humanity. But to take myself so seriously that if I'm not at everything, attending to everything, doing everything, she's gonna turn out to be a psychopath, I just can't do it. I'm like, I really like you, kid. I held you a whole 10 months. You came all the way through my vaginal canal. I did that. I made magic and science. Can't tell me shit. And yet, yet I still have to be human out here. Like, I keep holding on, and I wish Black folk, Black women in particular, will hold on to the fact that we are human, y'all. Like, I don't want to be superhuman and I don't want to be inhumane, because both ain't human. And I want to be human. I want to have the depth and breadth to be all the things that humans get to be. And Black women seem to exist in some hemisphere where humanity doesn't exist. Yeah. I'm just not here for it, right? Yeah.
Well, but I think one thing you mentioned is important, and that is how does the mother or woman parent and love in relation to her partner, whether that be male or female, and the balance of those roles, and how you get to be a partner and be a mother, and how that helps and teaches your daughter how to love and accept and receive love from a partner. And again, that doesn't have to happen from mommy and daddy, right? It could be mommy and mommy. It could be mommy and mommy's best friend. It could be mommy and her, colleague. I mean, just seeing mommy in relation to other people and relationships with other people in that community setting teaches her relational love and relationships and how to treat other people and love and respect other people. So I'm glad you mentioned that. If that's all we get to even say about wifedom and motherdom, and just being a mother in relation to other people and having friends and going out to play. And I love to go play. One thing about me, my mama taught me that having fun, is good for the soul and good for a mom. And it's okay to do that.
All right, we have a question from Shamira.
Hi, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be with you guys this afternoon. I just graduated with my MSW. And when I say I am over the moon for this opportunity to even speak to you guys, and as a woman that's, like I said, I've been on this journey of loving myself for the past 3 years, because I had to reevaluate myself, so that way I could be better for, my children. I have the benefit of having the best of both worlds. I have my son, he'll be 15, and my daughter who's 10. So this question is mainly for my daughter, because both of my kids, they do have different dads. My son's dad, we co-parent, we have a wonderful relationship. That dynamic is wonderful. However, for my daughter, it's been a little more challenging for me in a sense. So my question is towards that. So I put, as a single mother, how can I continue to help inspire my daughter to know that she doesn't have to deal with the guilt of an absent father? Because, like I said, he's incarcerated right now. So I'm just still trying to, and still inspire her. I'm still trying to motivate her as much as I can, but it's still that part of her that, like I said, we're in therapy and everything else. However, it's still those vulnerable moments that, we have conversations on a daily, and I'm just like, okay, and I'm still second guessing myself. Am I saying the right things to her, at that moment? So if I could just get some type of tips from you ladies, I would be really grateful for that.
Alero, go right ahead.
Well, first, my dad was not around. He was not there at all. I mean, he left when I was about 4 and just wasn't present. So if you need some sort of validation that everything will be okay, it will be. Everything will be okay. People have the community experience or parenting experience or home environment that they have, and you shouldn't have to apologize for that. It sounds like you are really doing what I was going to say, because as you started asking the question, the things I thought of you were doing. You're in therapy, you're acknowledging it, and you're allowing her to talk about it. Of course, for me, I had to realize at a young age that, that your father is your first love. So talking about your father in relation to that is, I mean, romantic, sadly, like you see your dad as the first man in your life. So talking to her in relation to that is a good idea, but you don't have to overcompensate for it. And if you show her love and she has other male role models in her life, things will be okay.
And can I piggyback off that a little bit? Not only she said the first love, but what is important, Shamira, is for her to know, and I'm guessing because you did have sex with this person, that you did have a fondness for this person at one point. What Alero and I did talk about this recently, what children don't know will hurt them. If they don't know you and her dad had a great relationship, or you did like each other, or had a fondness, I mean, kids will go around thinking they were created in hate or created in some sort of weird environment. If you don't tell them, you know what, me and your dad loved each other and we chose you and you are the best of us, right? Or, that doesn't necessarily, but the idea is like to let her know her origin story is not her life story, right? Like, hey, me and your dad liked each other enough to have sex and have you. Sometimes parents don't even know that hearing that changes the whole way a person thinks about themselves or a child thinks about themselves. And it doesn't matter if y'all don't have a great relationship now, or if he's incarcerated now, he'll have the chance to possibly be in her life or not, or whatever. Like Alero said, she will be okay. But just to know and tell her about the good times, if there were any. We used to hang out all the time and we used to have fun and we used to watch Good Times or whatever you did together. Just let her know that there was a positive relational beginning there, an origin that she came out of, can do wonders.
She stole my answer because I write about this in the book. I think origin stories are so important for
Oh my God,
children.
look at that.
Right? Right?
I hate to say I haven't read your book yet. I will. I have almost 2 and an almost 3-year-old, so it's got to be Audible these days. But I will read it.
I narrated myself on Audible.
That's what I'm saying. I'm about to listen to it. But go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
So the origin story is everything. Like, and it matters for children even if they are not. So like my daughter finds me problematic. So I was like, kid, it was daddy's best day. Let me tell you, I got stories, right? Like it is just important for children to have a sense of their creation was a beautiful moment. But because I'm a sociologist, I have to also add this piece of advice to you. I put in the chat a book called Visiting Day by Jacqueline Woodson. And as a child who is in a family where I have brothers with different fathers, again, in Jamaica, it's not a problem. In the United States, people got too many words sometimes about your family construction, and they can make you feel bad about your family construction. Like, oh, how come you and your brother got different names, right? And so it's really important that she not be ashamed of her identity as a child whose parent is incarcerated. It's the shame associated with that. She needs to be able to reclaim that. And there are a couple of different ways of reclamation, but again, I'm a sociologist, so I want to give you the sociology of it, is that the book Visiting Day really reorganizes Jacqueline Woodson's favorite uncle. The context of the book is her favorite uncle, who's really been kind of a father figure, is incarcerated. And she ends up exploring how many of us in our family have been touched by the criminal legal system. And that when people start to talk about engagement with a criminal legal system as an individual failing, instead of as a structural oversight that is constantly intervening, disrupting our families, that's how shame comes about. So children need words to help them understand that her father's incarceration, I do not need to know whatever actions led there, but that oversight and that criminal legal system is a part of what organizes and disrupts, shapes, and influences Black families. And so she does not have to carry any shame associated with that. My father is incarcerated is a story she feels like telling, she can tell without that load, and she needs language of that legal system in its role in disrupting Black families across the globe. And the fact that she is experiencing that. So she can visit her father, if that's a possibility, without shame. She can talk about her father as a human being. If you are anywhere near Virginia, for example, Angela Patton runs an organization called Girls for Change, and she has an annual dance called Date with the Dads. And it is where fathers who are incarcerated are able to have a dance with their daughters, and it is quite a big production. Angela Patton also has a TED Talk where she talks about this, and I'll put the link in the chat. But I really think it's important that because there are these idealized notions of what families should look like, children who do not fit in that framework are often feeling some exterior pressure to feel shameful about it. And on my case is different from your daughter's, but there has been so much effort. I didn't grow up. I met my dad when I was 28. And there's been so much effort to somehow make me feel bad about my brothers having a different name for me and my dad not being in my life. And she needs language. And I think sociological language helps here with some of this, but the book is also really quite a lovely book.
Could I just ask one question? Does the father of your other child have any relationship with your daughter?
I want to say we try our best to,
okay.
So what we do is we do co-parent. So his children are allowed to come over here and my children are allowed to go over there. So we do we do co-parent. It's not on a regular basis, but we do some things together, like as far as with the children and things like that.
Okay. because I would think that would be helpful for her to not feel like one of my, one has a father and I don't.
But you guys did help me a lot with that, and I'm definitely gonna get that book of Visiting Day. I want to read that book, but that was really helpful. And Dr. Janice, thank you for actually pinpointing something to me, which allowing her to let her go visit her dad, because she has been bullied a lot, especially lately, with a few of her peers that, they were, would say like mean girl things. And the first thing they would do is hit below the belt, which is one thing that's a trigger for her, is that her dad is incarcerated. And one thing that I, like I said, I continuously try to uplift her and things like that when she gets triggered. And then, did you talk to Ms. Russo about it, and how did that make you feel? And, so we're trying to do that. So, but one thing that I have not really done was, like I said, take her to see her father as much as I should. So maybe I should, and you guys enlighten me on that. And I thank you for that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I do want to say, though, I think that people really do underestimate the invasive ways in which the criminal legal system has been in our families, and many children who are even participating in being bullies about it, they too are underinformed. And to the extent that the network of caregivers that you're around or the school systems that you participate in, this really needs to be more of a conversation. I want to give some bad Janice advice related to this and to all other parents. This is not scientific, y'all, but I know because Black parents really like their children to be obedient, which is like a thing that y'all are really interested in. To the extent that you can allow your daughter to be a smart ass, it really helps to quell some of these bullying actions. Like, I really enjoy a shut a shit down. And again, I know obedient parenting doesn't allow for that, but I encourage y'all to just lean slightly into it, because some of these kids will come for your kid and just shut it down. Because it's hard to unhear. It's hard to unhear, but to the extent that you can interrupt it, it's really quite helpful. So just let your daughter know that your mommy got some bad parenting advice that says she should. Sometimes you just really have to shut some things down before they're said. Because it's, you can ruminate. Io can tell you.
It's so interesting that so many things you've said, I have like either had that same experience or, so with I guess because I have a boy child, we act out shutting shit down, especially physicalities. So to that extent, I agree. Bully, maybe because I was bullied a lot and I had to shut it down myself. So he and I role play on shutting it down.
It helps. It helps. Like,
it's gonna happen no matter what, no matter who you are, no matter how you look, no matter who you have as a parent, people are gonna come for you. It's good to make sure they're ready.
Yeah.
And that's the message, right? That's what makes it not bad parenting, right? Like, you don't want to say like, go out and cuss out anyone who messes with you. But the message is, no matter how smart you are or pretty you are or fun you are or not or whatever, people are people, and they have the inherent sense of wanting to test you or come for you or compete with you. That is the human nature. And so you can shut down someone who is coming for you, because that is also another human response to not allow you to come into my space and disrespect me or try to make me feel a certain way, right? So that's what makes it just that lesson of, you're beautiful and you're smart and you're this and you're that, but it doesn't matter. Some people just aren't going to care about that, and they need to learn that early on, right? Because you don't want to feel less than or whatever with the first time you encounter some things, and that makes you feel a certain way about yourself.
But not only that, though, it's For example, I tell him if somebody pushes you or push past you, or just, what do you do? And to just practice for her saying, sometimes just saying stop, as in her age, and not necessarily, obviously, if she's quick-witted, she can, but just to say, stop that. I don't like that, and it's not cute.
No.
Sometimes stops people. So practice that kind of thing with her, and what you think is a positive way to respond, but to shut something like that down it's really good parenting.
All right, so we're going to take two final questions. I see a hand raised in the chat, and that person's name begins with a Y.
Yura, that's my friend. Yura.
Hi, my name is Yura. I want to speak to the young lady that just spoke about her daughter, because I can relate to her on, and Alero, Io both know, on so many levels. Being a single mom and having two sets of children. I have three sons. My 15-year-old's dad is involved. My younger two's dad just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. So it's hard to parent the two when you have one father who is active and present, and you have one that is absent as well. I'll be 44 this year. My father was in prison. My grandparents raised me growing up. So I have a son that has been bullied. So I can see on different faces what you're experiencing. What I will tell you for your daughter, reassure her that you love her. Her dad loves her. As Alero said, having other males, be it uncles, be it mentors at school, present and consistent, will fill that void. But what I found with my boys is being open and honest and having those, given the history, yes, but also having those very hard conversations. I miss daddy too. I wish that he were here. However, he is not. It does not undervalue his love for you. He still loves you. But we got to kind of keep pushing on and just validating their feelings, being there for them, letting them know that I relate to the same things they relate to. There's a protective factor that I have to have. For example, like Father's Day, I had to tell my 15-year-old, we got to kind of be low key about Father's Day because that's going to be a sore spot for them. Make your phone calls, communicate with your dad, but in a protective kind of mother bear avenue. We don't want to dig into those wounds. But the big thing I can say is, yes, let her visit her father. No one ever told me anything about my dad. Everything that I learned about him when I was old enough to be aware, I learned it on my own. And I will say, to date, Alero knows my father and I have a very good relationship. And he has a very strong relationship with all three of my boys. So we were just blessed that at the point that he turned his life around, my youngest son was 3 months old. He'll be 8 next year. He just turned 7. He's able to fill those voids for them, as well as we were able to mend our relationship. And at this day and age, have a very strong relationship, and he's very successful. But I did visit my dad in prison. I did visit him in jail with my family. Allow her, as much as she's safe, and she feels safe, to have that interaction with him. Allow her to write him, but you also be her support system, letting her know her feelings are valid, her struggles are valid. Being bullied, yes, she has to learn to stand up for herself and set those limits. And she doesn't have to have those conversations about who her dad is or, where he is. That's her, that's her private situation. If she feels like discussing it, discuss it. If you don't, you don't have to. But I just want to offer you that advice. And it's just really important that you back her up and be her stronghold and her soft place to land in all of those feelings, emotions, and letting her know that she is validated in every way that she feels. And also that regardless of how she feels, you have her back.
And forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. I feel a little bit something there.
Guilt, yeah. Give yourself grace.
From you. So work through how you feel too about it and the situation and him and your relationship, and you could do that with her. You could say, mommy's got some, stuff to work out too, and I'm doing the work too, just like you are, and be human. Our children need to know we're human. So when they get to Janice's age and 16, they already know you're human. You don't have to humanize it for them. It's not a new lesson. Because I think, like Alero said, we did put our mom on a pedestal, and I don't think I saw her as human until an adult. And that there's pros and cons to that, but I think for your situation, I think you have to be human earlier, and let her know you have feelings and emotions, and you're working through life too, so she knows she has the space to do that. And like Yura said, you'll be a soft space for her, and a comfort and a safe and secure place for her to just break down and build her up or go off or whatever.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we have one final question that was written directly to me to ask of the group is, what do you have to say to those who are aspiring parents? I can begin first because I have the shortest answer. Good luck though. I think that I feel sometimes I feel the way about parenting that I feel about marriage. Like when I was like, people still doing that. Like they still out here just creating families and going to weddings and doing that. I think that parenting is as much, you have to take the task seriously. It is a serious task, but you hold it gently. Have as much fun as you can and be a learner on the journey. That's what, but it's a serious gig, but don't take yourself so seriously, because really you cannot get through it or anywhere in it without messing up a lot. You're just gonna mess up, because remember, they're the teacher, and they begin the first year not even being able to talk, and they bossing you around. So you are the student in the relationship. So that's my advice to people who aspire. What do you all have to say?
Let me say right quick, one thing I say to my students: be very careful in terms of the partner you choose to co-parent. Okay.
That was going to be one of the things I said. As much as you can.
As much as you can.
As much as you can. Make sure, and I didn't have kids till later in life because of this. Everyone you like and you love is not necessarily going to be a good co-parent for you. So you might not need to like or marry or love the person that makes you feel the best and that makes you feel pleasure. If you want to be a parent, you got to kind of put some of that aside and say, okay, but are you going to be here up with me in the middle of the night? Are you going to be changing diapers? Are you going to be, and that might not be the same person. So as much as you can, and you don't know everybody until, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know, if they don't have any children, you don't know what kind of father they be. But if they are a father, pay attention to what kind of father they are, right? If that's the kind of father they're going to be your child too. Okay, it's not about the mom. It's not about what she allows him to do and all that. The baby mama, no. He's going to be the kind of father he is to his other children, to your children, within the context of your home, right? So make sure you choose a partner, and then there's no right or way to do it. There's no right or way. Your mama might tell you there's a right way. Your friends, whatever, they don't know. There's no right or wrong way to do it. As long as you are trying your best and trying to be a better parent than you were the day before, you're doing a good job.
Two things. One we haven't said, which I found profound again in Dr. Janice's book, that I've thought about, is to try to your best to parent the child that you have.
Yep.
Cater that parenting to them. Erase the notions you have, like he's not going to be, I have a child that is not athletic at all. So don't worry, but he's not going to be a football or basketball player. Try to kind of, accentuate what they are good at and the things they love, and listen to them as much as you can. I know we've talked a lot about the traditional roles and obedience and all that, but people think of it as white or European to involve your child and listen to their voice in terms of your parenting. Give them a voice as much as you can, if it's respectful, and listen to them and try to cater your parenting to who they are. And then again, I can't stress enough that, the title of Dr. Janice's book has joyful in it. It's a joyful experience. Life should be really joyful. Try to make it as joyful as possible for you and for them.
you so much. So Dr. Shetfall, you get to make the final comments. I want to thank everyone for being here. This has been so much fun. Alero, you know I got to come to Georgia. I'm trying to find a house, Sheila. I need a house. I love y'all so much. Dr. Shetfall, you know we gonna have to drink. And
I want to drink with y'all.
I am so excited. This is just such a blessing. My heart is so full. So I turn it over to you, Dr. Shetfall, for the final words, comments, thoughts, ideas, and then I bid everyone adieu.
Well, I want to just thank you all for inviting me, and I think that we should have a similar session at Spelman College in the fall when we reconvene. Because I guarantee you, young, as you all know, young Black women who are in college and guys from Morehouse come really need this kind of conversation. So that would be a chance for us to meet each other and go out and eat and have a drink together. So let's do that. But this has been great, and this is part one.
Part one. I'm here for it. I'm on sabbatical until 23, baby.
Okay, so you should plan this, Janice.
All right, I'm on it. I'm good at planning. I'm good at planning.
Thank you all for coming and having us.
Thank you all. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you. I love y'all.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye. Okay, listen.